Imagine boarding a plane in Los Angeles and stepping off in Tokyo before your coffee even cools. Sounds impossible? Not anymore? A new type of aircraft, whispered about in industry circles and tested behind closed hangars, is finally being revealed. It's not just faster, it's radically different. We're not talking a few minutes shaved off your flight time. We're talking intercontinental travel cut from half a day to just 2 hours. But here's the catch. You won't even hear it coming. There's no loud boom when it breaks the sound barrier. There's barely a trail in the sky. It's sleek, silent, and fast enough to blur borders. Some experts are calling it the death of commercial jet lag. Others say it could completely upend everything we know about geography. But what really makes this thing terrifying? It's what's missing from its design. This isn't some futuristic art piece. This is a real prototype. The plane doesn't have windows. It doesn't even have wings in the traditional sense. Instead, it relies on revolutionary airflow manipulation and ultralight materials developed with help from military black projects and NASA-funded research. The interior, full wall-to-wall display screens simulate panoramic views or play calming visuals to counter the mind-bending speed. And those wings? Hidden, blended, and borderline invisible. This aircraft uses shape-shifting body design and intelligent flight surfaces. It bends to the air, not fights it. The result? A flying machine that doesn't look like a plane at all. But the scariest part? That odd design makes it shockingly fast. This isn't just faster than commercial jets, this is faster than most military fighters. This plane cruises at over 1,500 miles per hour, and it can push even further. For context, that's New York to London in under 90 minutes, faster than Concorde ever dreamed, and without the thunderous boom that got Concorde banned over land. How is that possible? Engineers have cracked something called low-boom supersonic technology. In simple terms, it muffles the sound shockwaves that typically make sonic flight unbearable near cities. You can now fly faster than sound without waking up an entire town. But where did this technology suddenly come from? The answer leads us to a name you've definitely heard before. NASA, often seen as the quiet giant in aviation, has been working on something behind the scenes. Tucked away in a remote facility, they built a plane called the X-59. But that was just the start. What followed was a deep collaboration between space engineers, stealth aircraft experts, and even Hollywood designers to craft something that was as beautiful as it was deadly fast. The government didn't want people talking about it too early. Too many risks, too much money, too much power in the wrong hands. But now, private companies are jumping on board, using NASA's declassified tech to push the envelope. The problem? Some of these companies are reviving an aircraft once banned from the skies. Back in the early 2000s, the Concorde was grounded. It was loud, expensive, and tragically flawed. But its dream never died. And now, with new tech in hand, private aviation giants are pulling that dream out of the grave. But not everyone is cheering. Air regulators are nervous. Pilots are skeptical. Airlines, some are terrified. Because these planes don't just offer faster travel, they offer competition that could make entire fleets obsolete. Suddenly, a 10-hour haul becomes a 2-hour hop. First class becomes meaningless when everyone's getting there in a blink. And that's not even the wildest part, because one of these planes already took off. For decades, supersonic travel was considered dead in the water. The Concorde's final flight in 2003 marked the end of an era that many believed would never return. Too loud, too costly, and far too inefficient for mass air travel. The skies went quiet, but behind that silence, a few visionaries were quietly working on a comeback that almost no one saw coming. In the shadows of Silicon Valley and deep inside aerospace research labs, engineers were experimenting with lighter materials, new engine types, and artificial intelligence-driven flight systems. They weren't just trying to recreate Concorde, they were trying to fix its biggest failures. One of those failures was sonic boom, another was fuel inefficiency, and the third? Passenger comfort at supersonic speeds. Enter Boom Supersonic, a startup with massive funding and an even bigger ambition to build a supersonic plane that's affordable, quiet, and ready for everyday use. They call it Overture, and it's not science fiction anymore. It's in development, and the prototype is expected to take its first official flight very soon. But what makes Overture different isn't just the speed, it's what happens inside the cabin. Step into the cabin of Boom's Overture, and it doesn't feel like a plane. It feels like a futuristic lounge built for speed and silence. Every seat is business class quality, no middle seats, panoramic digital windows, even in spots with no actual view, white noise-cancelling systems built into every headrest, a pressurized environment calibrated to feel like a cozy mountain resort rather than a tin can at 45,000 feet. The plane is expected to cruise at around Mach 1.7, that's nearly twice the speed of a regular jet. But passengers won't feel the bump, shake, or ear-popping noise you'd expect from breaking the sound barrier. That's because the plane uses a long, narrow nose cone, a redesigned fuselage, and new engine inlets that reduce turbulent drag. Even the engines themselves are engineered without afterburners, one of the noisiest components of older supersonic jets. This isn't just luxury, it's necessary, because when you're flying at over 1,000 miles per hour, even the tiniest detail can feel exaggerated. But it's what happens outside the plane that really shocks people. Let's talk about that New York to London trip. Right now, flying from New York to London takes around 7 hours. With Overture or its future competitors, that same flight could take 90 minutes. That's faster than most people's daily commute. And it's not just about saving time, it's about rewriting time zones. You could take off from JFK after dinner and arrive in London before your friends even go to bed. The implications are massive. Business trips that used to take a week can be done in a day. Weekend vacations to foreign countries become completely normal. But here's where things get crazy. This speed isn't even the limit. Engineers believe they can push future versions past Mach 2, possibly even to Mach 3, which would reduce transatlantic travel to under an hour. It's like going back in time. You could take off in Paris and land in Boston before the sun rises there. But to do that safely, the plane needs more than just engines. It needs science that's never been used in commercial flight before, which brings us to the strangest phrase in aerospace engineering: sonic silk. To make these planes cut through the air without tearing themselves apart, engineers had to develop entirely new skin materials. Sonic silk isn't a literal fabric, it's a nickname for a new generation of composite skin materials designed to be light, flexible, and ultra-strong. These aren't metals like titanium or carbon fiber. They're hybrids, layers of synthetic compounds woven together to absorb shock, resist heat, and dampen vibration. When you fly at Mach 1.7 or beyond, air friction turns deadly. Temperatures on the nose of the plane can exceed 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Traditional aircraft materials would warp, crack, or simply melt. Sonic silk adapts to that pressure, flexing with the airflow instead of resisting it. And here's the kicker: some of the materials used were originally developed for space capsules and stealth drones. That's why these planes don't just look futuristic. They're borrowing literal space tech to stay airborne at those speeds. But powering a plane like this takes more than fancy skins. It takes a fuel no one's used before. Forget jet fuel as we know it. The next-gen supersonic planes will run on something much cleaner and colder. Boom Supersonic has announced that Overture will use sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, which is produced from things like used cooking oil, plant waste, and even algae. But it's not just about going green. This new fuel actually burns cooler, reducing the stress on the engine and improving combustion efficiency. Here's what's mind-blowing. SAF can cut carbon emissions by as much as 80% compared to traditional jet fuel, and it doesn't require brand new engines. It can be used in modified versions of existing turbine engines, which means it's not just future-ready, it's ready now. Cold-burning fuel also solves a major problem with supersonic travel: heat buildup. Less heat means less expansion and contraction on the plane's body, extending its lifespan and safety rating. But there's a twist. Airlines aren't exactly thrilled about this tech. Some are actually trying to stop it. You'd think the airline industry would be thrilled about a jet that cuts flight times in half. But behind the scenes, major legacy carriers are sweating. Why? Because supersonic planes disrupt everything their business model depends on. Think about it. Airlines make the most money not on flight time, but on flight volume. The longer you're in the air, the more they can charge for upgrades, meals, entertainment, and seat options. Supersonic jets flip that on its head. You're in, you're out, and they lose hours of monetizable time. Worse, these jets aren't being built by Boeing or Airbus, the usual aircraft giants. They're coming from startups that want to lease their own jets directly to travelers, cutting out traditional airline middlemen. It's like Uber skipping the taxi companies entirely. That terrifies carriers. So what are they doing? Lobbying hard. Some are pressuring governments to slow down supersonic approval. Others are quietly buying stakes in SAF producers to control fuel access. One thing's clear: if they can't control this technology, they'll try to delay it. But the public, they're already dreaming of something else: affordable, lightning-fast tickets. When people hear supersonic, they assume super expensive. And for a long time, that was true. A ticket on the Concorde could cost the equivalent of over $12,000 today. It was reserved for rock stars, CEOs, and royalty. But the next generation of supersonic planes is aiming lower, much lower. Boom! Supersonic has promised that Overture will offer business-class prices, not billionaire fares. A New York to London ticket could cost under $4,000, and that's just the beginning. Once economies of scale kick in, those prices could drop even further. How? Smaller planes, less crew, fewer fuel stops, more direct flights. And if SAF becomes standard, countries might even subsidize these flights to promote green travel. Some companies are even talking about subscription-based supersonic passes, offering unlimited flights for a flat monthly fee. It sounds insane, but it's real. And it means this isn't just a toy for the rich. It could become the new standard. The only problem? These planes are so advanced, most current pilots aren't qualified to fly them. Flying a supersonic plane is not like flying a 737. The cockpit is packed with new instruments, predictive AI systems, and flight dynamics that behave more like a fighter jet than a commercial aircraft. Pilots will need entirely new training, more like astronauts than airline captains. Reaction times need to be faster. At Mach 1.7, you cross entire states in minutes. One miscalculation can be fatal. Visual cues outside the cockpit are almost useless because of the speed. So pilots rely heavily on sensors, augmented reality overlays, and machine-assisted navigation. Some of the control systems even have autonomous safety overrides, meaning the jet can take over in emergency situations. And while that sounds safe, it's sparked huge debate in the aviation world. Who's really in control? The human or the code? The future of flight might require pilots who think more like programmers than pilots, and that shift has already triggered a quiet conflict in the aviation industry. Right now, there's a battle happening, but it's not on runways. It's in boardrooms, government offices, and think tanks. Countries are scrambling to lead the supersonic revival. The US, Europe, Japan, and even the United Arab Emirates are all trying to get ahead. Whoever controls the skies at Mach 2 will have not just economic power, but geopolitical leverage. It's not just about commercial flights either. Supersonic transport has major military applications. Transporting troops, medical supplies, or intelligence across continents in under 2 hours? That changes the game. So even while private companies are pushing for public flights, governments are co-investing with one eye on defense strategy. The fight isn't loud, there are no headlines, but money is quietly moving, patents are being bought, and trade restrictions are tightening. It's a silent war over a very fast future, and if that future really arrives, it's not just business or politics that will change, it's your life. Imagine booking a spontaneous trip to another continent the way you'd call an Uber. Dinner in Paris, then back in time to tuck your kids into bed in Chicago. The new age of supersonic flight could compress the planet. Not metaphorically, literally. Time zones will become irrelevant. Global careers, relationships, and lifestyles will evolve overnight. Remote work takes on new meaning when you can fly from one headquarters to another during your lunch break. Tourism will explode. Cultures will blend faster, but so will competition. Global talent will have no borders. The job you thought was safe may now go to someone who can fly in, do it faster, and fly out. This technology changes more than how we travel. It changes how we live, love, and work. But it also raises a question we haven't asked yet. If the world gets this small, do airports even make sense anymore? Supersonic jets are fast, but building them is only half the battle. The real bottleneck? Airports. Today's airports are designed around slow-moving processes, long security lines, check-in counters, layovers, gates. Supersonic travel doesn't fit into that system. It's too fast, too precise, too different. So companies are already planning mini airports. Think private terminals, automated boarding, biometric ID scans, and boarding to take off in under 15 minutes. Supersonic flights don't need thousands of passengers per day. They just need speed and convenience. Some even envision launching from offshore hubs or converted military bases to bypass crowded airspace entirely. And here's where things get weird. One company is already building a floating airport platform off the coast of California just for supersonic travel. If successful, it could mark the beginning of the end for traditional airport infrastructure, which raises the next question. If we're already thinking that far ahead, are these the last planes we'll ever need? Some engineers believe this new wave of supersonic jets may be the final evolution of traditional air travel. After this, things get strange. We're talking point-to-point suborbital rockets, aircraft that leave the atmosphere, vertical takeoff air taxis, and space planes that can cross hemispheres in under 30 minutes. Elon Musk's SpaceX has already tested Starship for orbital missions, but what if a version of that could transport civilians? Imagine blasting off from Texas and landing in Shanghai before your watch can sync to local time. But before we get there, supersonic jets like Overture or NASA's successors may act as the bridge between today's clunky airline model and tomorrow's space-hopping future. They're fast, they're silent, and they still use runways, for now. Still, all this speed, power, and promise comes with a catch: hype. Every few decades, aviation gets a poster child for the future of flight. Most fade away. The Concorde, grounded. Hypersonic passenger dreams, mostly dead. So what makes this moment different? For one, the technology has finally caught up with the dream. AI-assisted design, sustainable fuels, low-boom engineering, none of that existed during the Concorde era. For another, the world is hungry for speed. In an era of instant everything, slow travel is a deal-breaker. But yes, there's still risk. Supersonic startups face tight regulations, high production costs, and a skeptical public. One bad crash, one economic downturn, and the entire project could be delayed by decades. And the timeline? It's ambitious. The first commercial supersonic flight in this new wave is still a few years out. So the hype is real, but so is the tech, which leads to one burning question on everyone's mind. Boom, Supersonic says Overture will take its first passengers by the late 2020s. NASA's X-59 will start test flights even sooner. Japan, France, and a few Middle Eastern nations are also developing their own prototypes. So, depending on where you live, you could be stepping onto a supersonic jet in under 5 years. Business travelers will be first, VIPs, diplomats, and high-net-worth flyers. But the trickle-down effect will be fast. Within a decade, we could see supersonic hubs operating out of major cities like Miami, Dubai, and Singapore. If all goes well, a regular person could fly from San Francisco to Sydney in under 4 hours for the price of a normal business class ticket. And once it happens, there's no turning back. The world's going to feel a lot smaller, which brings us to the final point. This isn't just about travel anymore. This new breed of aircraft doesn't just change how we fly, it changes how we live. It redefines time, distance, and human connection. Borders become blurrier, relationships become stronger, work, play, and global experience become instantly available. A faster world is a smaller world, and that has consequences. Cultural exchange will accelerate, economies will shift, climate policies will evolve, wars may even change, as speed becomes a weapon in itself. But above all, the return of supersonic flight reminds us of something we forgot. The future can still surprise us. For a while, it felt like aviation was stuck. Same airports, same planes, same complaints. But now, something different is coming. Something sleek, silent, and impossibly fast. So next time you stare out the airport window, remember this: the plane that will change your life is already being built.